is not a biography, nor does it follow a chronological path. For all the ups and downs of his personal life and professional career, Beethoven remained remarkably consistent in his most fundamental convictions about himself and his art, and it is this inner consistency that provides the key to understanding the relationship between his life and his works. Beethoven approached music in much the same way he approached life. He liked to adopt multiple perspectives on whatever attracted his attention: a thematic idea, a musical genre, a friend, a patron, money, politics, religion. He did not go through life with a perpetual frown on his face, and we should be wary of equating too quickly the emotions we hear in his music with his own personal feelings. Indeed, we shortchange our experience of his music if we think of him as the misanthropic, suffering soul he has so often been made out to be. His music is the creation of an individual far more complex than the iconic scowl. The question, then, is not how any particular event shaped any particular work, but rather how the events of his life shaped his broader vision of his art, which ultimately served to frame everything he wrote. The life, in other words, influenced the works, though not in ways that allow us to draw direct lines between the two. The challenge is to relate Beethoven to all of his music, and not to just some of it. This means going beyond the triumphant, heroic compositions to include such works as the zany Eighth Symphony, the enigmatic Bagatelle for piano, Opus 126, No. 1, and the Janus-faced finale of the Serioso String Quartet, Opus 95. Beethoven thought of himself not simply as a composer, but as a tone poet, Tondichter, an artist who poeticizes through music. This was, in his time, a new word for a new kind of artist, and it is particularly fitting in Beethoven's case. For his music, like poetry, speaks to something deep within the human soul and demands interpretation. It compels us to move beyond the immediacy of the surface to grasp what it is that stirs us so profoundly. Tone poet remains as timely today, some 250 years after Beethoven's birth, as it was during his own lifetime. Chapter 1. The Scowl. There are no right or wrong ways to listen to Beethoven's music, but some are more accommodating than others. The first thing to get past is the scowl. It is hard to avoid, for it confronts us everywhere, from album covers and dust jackets to monumental statues and those little white busts that adorn upright pianos. Even experienced listeners find it difficult to repress the stern visage behind the music. When we hear works such as the Fifth Symphony or the Appassionata Sonata that are intense and even violent, it fits. And we can be forgiven if we conjure up the image of a deeply furrowed brow when we listen to the gloomy, meditative first movement of the Moonlight Sonata. The scowl is an outward manifestation of inner turmoil, and these are the kinds of works that seem to come directly from the soul of their creator. Yet, when we listen to works that contradict this rictus of suffering, the laugh-out-loud Eighth Symphony or the tuneful, rollicking finale of the Piano Sonata Opus 79, for example, we struggle to reconcile what we are hearing with the image of a composer who was supposedly self-absorbed, turned inward, and uninterested in presenting himself to the world in any sort of agreeable manner. We are disappointed, moreover, by the very existence of such crowd-pleasing potboilers as Wellington's Victory, complete with simulated cannon and musket fire, or Der glorreiche Augenblick, The Glorious Moment, written for the Congress of Vienna in 1814 to celebrate the restoration of monarchical rule across Europe in the wake of Napoleon. For many listeners, such works somehow do not represent the real Beethoven, that is, the scowling Beethoven. What then are we to do with all those many works, the bulk of his output, in fact, that contradict the scowl? One option is to listen to Beethoven in the way his